The certified letter arrived at exactly 8:47 am, hand-delivered by a process server who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Karen sighed for it with a flourish, her coffee still steaming in her other hand. Emergency HOA board meeting. She read aloud to her husband, Dave, who was hiding behind his newspaper. Immediate cessation of all unauthorized pool modifications required. Failure to comply will result in legal action. Dave lowered his paper just enough to reveal his worried eyes. Karen, honey, maybe we should. Should what? Cave to their intimidation tactics. Karen crumpled the letter with satisfying violence. I've researched this, Dave. They have no legal standing. The fountain doesn't violate any city codes, and their precious covenants have more loopholes than a fishing net. Her phone buzzed. Then again, and again. The neighborhood gossip mill was in full swing, and Karen's fountain was the hottest topic since Mrs. Peterson's husband ran off with the pool boy. 47 messages, she announced, scrolling through the notifications. Half calling me a hero, half calling me a monster. At least I'm not boring anymore. The doorbell rang, and Karen peered through the peephole to see a reporter from the local news station. Her heart skipped. This was bigger than she'd imagined. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm Jenny Rodriguez from Channel 7. We'd love to get your side of the fountain story. Within an hour, Karen found herself on camera, the golden fountain glinting dramatically in the background. She'd changed into her best dress, the navy blue one that made her look authoritative but approachable. This is about more than a fountain, she told the reporter earnestly. This is about property rights, about the fundamental American freedom to improve your own home without tyrannical oversight. The interview went viral. By evening, she had friend requests from strangers across the country, supportive messages from fellow HOA victims, and 3 interview requests from national news outlets. But with fame came consequences. Gerald Pemberton stood on her doorstep at 7 p.m., his face grim. Congratulations, Karen. You've made us all look like fools on television. I merely told the truth. The truth? Gerald's laugh was bitter. The truth is that you violated our community standards, and now you're dragging our neighborhood through the mud for your 15 minutes of fame. Behind him, Karen could see other board members lurking in the shadows, along with several neighbors. Some looked supportive, others hostile. The community was splitting down the middle. I want that fountain gone by Friday, or we're filing an injunction, Gerald continued. And don't think your media circus will save you. We have lawyers too. Then I guess we'll see each other in court, Karen replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. As Gerald's entourage retreated, Karen's daughter Emma appeared at her side. Mom, are you sure about this? People are saying some pretty nasty things online. Karen looked at her beautiful fountain, now illuminated by underwater lights that made it look like something from a fairy tale. Sometimes, sweetheart, you have to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. But as she closed the door, Karen wondered if she'd bitten off more than she could chew. The war was escalating, and she was no longer just fighting the HOA. She was fighting for the soul of her community. The sabotage happened at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. Karen woke to the sound of her fountain sputtering and gasping like a dying fish. By the time she reached the pool deck in her robe, the golden tears were dry, and the pump was making an ominous grinding noise. Vandalism, she breathed, examining the severed electrical cables. Someone had been busy with wire cutters. Dave emerged behind her, squinting in the darkness. Could be an accident. Maybe an animal. Animals don't use industrial-grade cable cutters, Dave. Karen's voice was ice-cold. This is war. By morning, she documented everything with photographs and called the police. Officer Martinez took notes with the weary expression of someone who'd seen too many neighborhood disputes. Any idea who might have done this, Mrs. Mitchell? Karen could think of at least 12 suspects, but she kept her suspicions to herself. I'm sure the security cameras will tell us everything we need to know. The bluff worked. Officer Martinez perked up. You have security cameras? Of course. Karen didn't mention that she'd only installed them the previous week, or that they were still in their boxes in the garage. I'll review the footage and get back to you. The news crews returned within hours. The story had evolved from HOA fountain dispute to fountain vandalism escalates neighborhood war. Karen gave interviews with the broken fountain behind her, playing the victim with Oscar-worthy performance. This is what happens when people choose intimidation over communication, she told Channel 7's Jenny Rodriguez. But I won't be silenced. I won't be bullied. The fountain repair would cost $3,000 and take a week. Karen paid it without hesitation, but privately, she was starting to feel the financial strain. Dave's concerned glances were becoming more frequent. That evening, an unexpected visitor arrived, Margaret Chen, the one board member who'd been notably absent from the fountain confrontations. I come in peace, Margaret said, raising her hands in mock surrender. May I come in? Over coffee, Margaret revealed the board's internal dynamics. Gerald's obsessed with this fountain thing. He's convinced you're trying to make him look weak. I'm not trying to make him look anything. He's doing that all by himself. Margaret sighed. The vandalism wasn't board-sanctioned, Karen. We might be control freaks, but we're not criminals. Then, I have my suspicions. But listen, there's something else. Gerald's been talking to lawyers about more than just the fountain. He's digging into your property records, looking for any violation he can find. Karen's blood ran cold. There were things in her property history that didn't bear scrutiny. A small addition to the back porch that may not have been properly permitted. A tree removal that might have skirted environmental regulations. Why are you telling me this? Margaret met her eyes. Because I've lived in this neighborhood for 15 years, and I've never seen it this divided. People are choosing sides, families are fighting, and it's all because of pride and stubbornness on both sides. After Margaret left, Karen sat alone in her darkened living room, staring at her broken fountain through the window. The golden tears looked forlorn without water, like a beautiful woman without a smile. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Nice fountain. Shame if something happened to it again. Karen's hands shook as she screenshot the message. The battle lines were drawn, but the enemy was no longer just the HOA board. Someone else was playing this game, and they were playing for keeps. The champagne flute shattered against the concrete as Karen Mitchell watched 3 HOA board members storm through her backyard gate like they owned the place. Which, technically, they kind of did. What in the Sam Hill is that? Gerald Pemberton, the HOA president, pointed a trembling finger at the gleaming golden fountain rising majestically from the center of Karen's kidney-shaped pool. Water cascaded in perfect arcs from 3 tiers of ornate basins, each one catching the afternoon sunlight like liquid fire. Karen smoothed her silk blouse and lifted her chin. It's a water feature, Gerald. Perhaps you've heard of them. It's a monstrosity, shrieked Dolores Finch, the secretary, her voice reaching a pitch that made the neighbor's dog howl. It's gaudy, it's ostentatious, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Karen interrupted, admiring her handiwork. She'd spent 3 months planning this moment, researching Italian fountain designs, consulting with contractors, and dreaming of the looks on her neighbors' faces. The reality exceeded her wildest expectations. The third board member, Harold Wickham, was frantically flipping through his copy of the HOA handbook. Section 4.2 clearly states that any pool modifications require prior approval from the Architectural Review Committee. Section 4.2 refers to structural modifications. Karen said smoothly, "This is merely a decorative enhancement, like a pool float, but more permanent." Gerald's face turned the color of a ripe tomato. "Don't you dare try to lawyer your way out of this, Karen. You know exactly what you've done." And she did. Oh, she absolutely did. This wasn't just about the fountain. This was about 3 years of petty tyranny, of being told her roses were too exuberant, of receiving violation notices for her trash cans being visible from the street for 37 minutes past the designated pickup time. This was about Harold measuring her grass with a ruler and finding it a 1/4 inch too tall. This was about Dolores reporting her teenage daughter's car for being parked askew in their own driveway. "I've done nothing wrong," Karen said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "I've enhanced my property's value and beauty, something this neighborhood desperately needs." The fountain's gentle babbling seemed to mock the stunned silence that followed. A small crowd of neighbors had gathered at the fence line, phones out, recording every moment. Karen could practically hear the neighborhood Facebook group exploding with notifications. "This isn't over," Gerald snarled, his small eyes glinting with malice. "We'll see about this." Enhancement. As the trio stormed off, Karen allowed herself a small smile. She'd fired the first shot in what would undoubtedly be an epic war. The fountain gurgled approvingly behind her, its golden surface reflecting her determined face. Let them bring their worst. She was ready for whatever came next. Karen's security system installation took 8 hours and cost more than her daughter's braces. 6 cameras, motion sensors, and a monitoring system that would make Fort Knox jealous. She watched the technicians work with grim satisfaction, knowing that the next attack would be captured in high-definition glory. She didn't have to wait long. The attempted break-in happened Friday night. Karen was reviewing HOA covenant loopholes when her phone exploded with alerts. The security app showed a figure in dark clothing attempting to climb her back fence, clearly heading for the fountain. "Dave," she hissed, grabbing his arm. "Someone's in the yard." But by the time they reached the window, the intruder was gone. The cameras had captured everything though, including a clear shot of the would-be saboteur's face as he looked directly into the lens. "Well, I'll be damned," Dave whispered, staring at the frozen image on Karen's phone. "That's Tommy Pemberton, Gerald's son." Karen's smile was sharp as a blade. Gerald's about to learn what happens when you mess with the wrong fountain. The police arrived within minutes. Tommy Pemberton was arrested at his parents' house, still wearing the same dark hoodie from the video. The local news had a field day. HOA president's son arrested in fountain vandalism case. Gerald's call came at 6 a.m., his voice cracking with rage and desperation. "This is your fault, Karen. You've destroyed my family." "I didn't make your son commit crimes, Gerald. That's on you. He's 19 years old. He made a mistake." "A mistake?" Karen's voice could have frozen hellfire. "Your son tried to destroy my property twice. This isn't a mistake. It's a pattern of criminal behavior." The neighborhood Facebook group exploded. Team Karen supporters rallied with posts about property rights and standing up to bullies. Team Gerald's faction spoke of respect for community standards and Karen's attention-seeking behavior. But the arrest changed everything. Suddenly, Gerald looked less like a concerned community leader and more like a desperate man whose personal vendetta had corrupted his son. The emergency HOA meeting that Saturday was standing room only. Karen entered to find the community center packed with neighbors, reporters, and even some curiosity seekers from other neighborhoods. Gerald looked haggard, his usual commanding presence diminished. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're here to discuss the ongoing fountain situation. The ongoing criminal harassment situation," Karen corrected loudly, earning scattered applause. Margaret Chen, clearly uncomfortable, read from prepared remarks about maintaining community standards while respecting individual rights. Harold Wickham mumbled something about architectural guidelines. Dolores Finch remained conspicuously silent. But the real fireworks came during the public comment period. Neighbor after neighbor stood up to share their own stories of HOA overreach, ridiculous violation notices, petty harassment, and arbitrary rule enforcement. "Mrs. Mitchell's fountain is beautiful," declared elderly Mrs. Patterson. "Unlike some board members, she's actually improved property values. The real problem," added newcomer James Wright, "is that certain people have forgotten this is a community, not a dictatorship." Gerald's face grew redder with each comment. Finally, he exploded. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. One person's selfish actions have destroyed our community harmony." "Harmony?" Karen stood up, her voice carrying across the silent room. "You call 3 years of nitpicking, harassment, and intimidation harmony. You call your son's criminal behavior harmony." The room erupted in arguments, neighbors shouting over each other, fingers pointing, accusations flying. In the chaos, Karen noticed something interesting. The board members weren't united. Margaret looked sympathetic, Harold seemed confused, and Dolores kept glancing nervously at Gerald. As the meeting dissolved into pandemonium, Karen felt a strange mixture of triumph and unease. She'd won this battle, but the war was far from over, and something in Gerald's eyes suggested he wasn't finished with her yet. The recall petition appeared on Karen's doorstep Monday morning, delivered by a smiling teenager who clearly had no idea what he was carrying. Petition to remove Gerald Pemberton from HOA Board of Directors. It read in bold letters across the top. Karen stared at the document, her coffee growing cold. She hadn't started this petition, but she knew exactly who had. Margaret Chen's call came an hour later. "I hope you're satisfied," she said without preamble. "I didn't." "You didn't have to. You lit the fuse, Karen. The rest of us are just watching the explosion." The petition had 63 signatures already, more than enough to trigger a recall election. Gerald's supporters were scrambling to organize a counter-campaign, but the damage was done. The fountain had become a symbol of something larger, the community's frustration with authoritarian leadership. Karen found herself in the strange position of being the de facto leader of a rebellion she'd never intended to start. Her phone rang constantly with interview requests, strategy sessions, and updates from neighbors who'd adopted her cause as their own. "I just wanted a fountain," she told Dave over dinner that night. "How did this become a political movement?" "You poked the bear, honey. Multiple times. With a very sharp stick." The recall election was scheduled for the following Saturday. Gerald launched a desperate campaign, going door to door with his remaining supporters, promising reforms and compromise. But his credibility was shot, and his son's arrest had made him radioactive. 2 days before the election, Karen received an unexpected visitor, Gerald himself, looking older and more tired than she'd ever seen him. "I want to make a deal," he said without preamble. "I'm listening. I'll resign quietly. No recall, no public humiliation. In exchange, you agree to work within the system going forward. No more media circuses, no more grandstanding." Karen studied his face, seeing desperation mixed with something that might have been genuine remorse. "What about the fountain?" "Keep it. Hell, build 2 more if you want. I'm done fighting." For a moment, Karen felt almost sorry for him. Almost. "What about your son?" Gerald's composure cracked. "He's getting counseling, and he'll be paying for your security system out of his own pocket. That's not enough. What do you want?" Karen thought about 3 years of petty harassment, about neighbors living in fear of violation notices, about the community that had been torn apart by ego and pride. "I want you to publicly apologize to every resident you've bullied. I want the Architectural Review Committee dissolved. And I want the covenants rewritten to focus on actual community welfare instead of aesthetic micromanagement." Gerald's jaw worked silently for a long moment. "You're asking me to dismantle everything I've built here. I'm asking you to fix what you broke." He stood to leave, then paused at the door. "You know, Karen, in another universe, we might have been friends. You've got backbone, I'll give you that. In another universe, you might have been a decent human being." The recall election was cancelled when Gerald submitted his resignation letter Friday morning. Margaret Chen was elected interim president by emergency board vote, and the first item on her agenda was establishing a community reconciliation committee. Karen's fountain bubbled serenely in the afternoon sun, its golden tears catching the light like a crown. The neighborhood Facebook group had moved on to debating the upcoming block party, and the reporters had found other stories to chase. But as Karen watched the water dance in the breeze, she noticed something troubling. The fountain's base had developed a small crack, invisible unless you knew where to look. Water was seeping out, slowly but steadily, undermining the structure from within. She made a mental note to call the repair company. Some victories, she was learning, required constant maintenance. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Enjoyed the show. Round 2 coming soon." Karen's blood ran cold. Gerald was gone, but someone else was still playing the game. The fountain gurgled innocently behind her, beautiful and defiant as ever, unaware that its greatest test was yet to come. The war was over, but the story was far from finished.